She slammed the citation on my amp mid-rehearsal. Unregistered noise event. Cease immediately or face $1,000 a day fines, she barked. My bandmates froze. But what she didn't know, I'd already cleared the permit, with her name on the approval list. She signed it last month. Now all I had to do was press play. I'm Marcus Quinn, 34. Sound engineer by day, guitarist by passion. My friends and I started our band, Civic Static, in my dad's garage, back when we were all broke, bored and trying to make something beautiful out of small-town silence. After he passed, I inherited the house, and with it, his old workbench, the paint-chipped porch, and his let them hear you philosophy. So yeah, keeping the music alive here wasn't about fame, it was about legacy. Every Friday, we practiced with the windows open. Neighbors would pull lawn chairs onto their driveways and listen with a beer in hand. For 3 years, no one complained. Until she moved in. Karen, HOA board member with a God complex. She called our rehearsals unauthorized events and said we were violating noise ordinances even at 3 p.m. on Saturdays. She started sending warnings, then citations. When that didn't work, she showed up during rehearsal and tried to shut it all down. But here's the thing. I'd seen it coming, and what she didn't realize was, I had a plan. A legal, public, and fully documented plan. One that made her part of the show, whether she liked it or not. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had to fight for something that wasn't just loud but alive? Stick around, because this isn't just a story about a band. It's about how one HOA tried to silence a legacy, and how the sound got louder. It started like it always had, tuning strings and passing beers around a garage, filled with hand-me-down amps and rusting toolboxes. The space still smelled like my dad, sweat sawdust, and the faint bite of motor oil. His pegboard of tools lined one wall, untouched since he passed. I never moved them. They were his instruments. Just like my guitar was mine. Every Friday the guys would roll up in their beat-up cars. Jesse in his paint-chipped Corolla, Tanya hauling her drums in the back of her station wagon, and Eli balancing coffee and sheet music like it was a science experiment. We'd push back the folding chairs, clear space beside the lawnmower, and plug in. That garage was our sanctuary. It had no insulation, so the summers cooked us and the winters made our breath visible, but we never missed a session. If someone had a rough week, we played louder. If someone got dumped or laid off, we played longer. It was therapy with distortion pedals. The neighborhood knew us, and they knew the sound. We'd been there long before the HOA started tightening its leash. The Lanes 2 doors down actually requested we cover Dreams by Fleetwood Mac one summer. Mrs. Cordova across the street used to bring over lemonade and sit with her dog during our sets. And the kids, the kids loved us. They'd dance in the driveways, doing improvised routines like they were on some kind of talent show stage. My band, Civic Static, was never meant to be a career move. It was what my dad called a resistance ritual. He believed that every generation had its own rebellion, and ours wasn't in politics or protest, it was music. Music in a world that tried to keep everyone quiet. He built that garage with his own hands back in '82. The original beams still had his pencil mark. The soundproof panels we installed years later were glued to plywood he'd cut with the same saw I keep in the corner. He used to joke, if you're gonna make noise, make sure you own the land you're shaking. And I did. I owned it now. The deed was in my name, and the taxes were current. The mortgage was paid off thanks to his life insurance, and not a single penny of HOA dues had ever gone unpaid. I'd kept everything exactly how he left it, minus the band stickers on the garage fridge, and the new coat of fire engine red paint on the door. For the longest time, it was peace. Karen didn't show up in that world. Not at first. Back then the HOA was a loose collection of retirees, who organized bake sales, published passive-aggressive newsletters, and occasionally left handwritten notes if someone's grass got too tall. It was neighborhood theater, mostly harmless. I even attended a meeting once, right after Dad introduced myself, said I'd be taking over the house and keeping the property in good shape. Mr. Delaney, the board president at the time, smiled and said, "Just don't let the music stop. This street needs it." And so it continued month after month, riff after riff. We kept our rehearsals under the city's noise ordinance limits, Never played past 8 p.m. Never blocked driveways. I even kept decibel logs using a phone app, just in case someone ever questioned us. Not that anyone did. Then one winter, a for sale sign popped up on the corner lot at the end of the block. I noticed the shutters were pristine, the lawn razor flat. No decorations, no bikes, no signs of life. The car in the driveway was a gray luxury SUV, with government plates, and an American flag magnet on the bumper. It didn't scream friendly, it screamed enforcement. 2 weeks later, the HOA newsletter came with a new name at the bottom. Karen Whitmore, Director of Community Standards. That was the first time I saw her. She wore sunglasses, even in the shade, and carried a clipboard like it was fused to her hand. She walked the sidewalks like she was running surveillance, pausing at every lawn ornament or trash can left out too long. When we waved, she didn't wave back. Still, nothing changed right away. She didn't say a word to us for months. She'd walk by during our rehearsals, lips pressed into a line, but never stopped. I figured she didn't like music. Fine, not everyone has taste. We didn't need her approval. Until the spring. That's when the notices started. At first they were subtle, a flyer taped to my mailbox, about quiet enjoyment clauses, and considerate noise levels. Then a newsletter warning about unregulated gatherings in residential garages. Then came the anonymous concerned neighbor letter typed, unsigned, folded with precision, mentioning repetitive drumming and low-frequency vibrations. I ignored them. Everyone gets one passive-aggressive letter in their life. It's like jury duty, but the tone shifted fast. One Friday, Tanya hadn't even finished setting up her hi-hat before I saw a flash outside. Karen phone raised, filming us from her driveway like we were criminals. I walked outside, smiled, and offered her a set list. She didn't smile back. She didn't say a word. Just turned and walked inside. Still, I didn't want conflict. I printed out the city's ordinance, clearly stating acceptable noise hours and limits, and tacked it next to the garage light switch. I emailed a copy to the HOA board, just in case. No response. And yet, the silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It started like it always had. Tuning strings and passing beers around a garage filled with hand-me-down amps and rusting toolboxes. The space still smelled like my dad, sweat, sawdust, and the faint bite of motor oil. His pegboard of tools lined one wall, untouched since he passed. I never moved them. They were his instruments, just like my guitar was mine. Every Friday, the guys would roll up in their beat-up cars, Jesse in his paint-chipped Corolla, Tanya hauling her drums in the back of her station wagon, and Eli balancing coffee and sheet music like it was a science experiment. We'd push back the folding chairs, clear space beside the lawnmower, and plug in. That garage was our sanctuary. It had no insulation, so the summers cooked us, and the winters made our breath visible. But we never missed a session. If someone had a rough week, we played louder. If someone got dumped or laid off, we played longer. It was therapy with distortion pedals. The neighborhood knew us, and they knew the sound. We'd been there long before the HOA started tightening its leash. The lanes 2 doors down actually requested we cover Dreams by Fleetwood Mac one summer. Mrs. Cordova across the street used to bring over lemonade and sit with her dog during our sets. And the kids, God, the kids loved us. They'd dance in the driveways, doing improvised routines like they were on some kind of talent show stage. My band Civic Static was never meant to be a career move. It was what my dad called a resistance ritual. He believed that every generation had its own rebellion, and ours wasn't in politics or protest, it was music. Music in a world that tried to keep everyone quiet. He built that garage with his own hands back in '82. The original beams still had his pencil mark. The soundproof panels we installed years later were glued to plywood he'd cut with the same saw I keep in the corner. He used to joke, if you're gonna make noise, make sure you own the land you're shaking. And I did. I owned it now. Every inch. The deed was in my name, and the taxes were current. The mortgage was paid off thanks to his life insurance, and not a single penny of HOA dues had ever gone unpaid. I'd kept everything exactly how he left it, minus the band stickers on the garage fridge and the new coat of fire engine red paint on the door. For the longest time, it was peace. Karen didn't show up in that world. Not at first. Back then, the HOA was a loose collection of retirees who organized bake sales, published passive-aggressive newsletters, and occasionally left handwritten notes if someone's grass got too tall. It was neighborhood theater, mostly harmless. I even attended a meeting once, right after Dad passed, introduced myself, said I'd be taking over the house and keeping the property in good shape. Mr. Delaney, the board president at the time, smiled and said, "Just don't let the music stop. This street needs it." And so it continued, month after month, riff after riff. We kept our rehearsals under the city's noise ordinance limits, never played past 8 p.m., never blocked driveways. I even kept decibel logs, using a phone app just in case someone ever questioned us. Not that anyone did. Then one winter, a for sale sign popped up on the corner lot at the end of the block. I noticed the shutters were pristine, the lawn razor flat, no decorations, no bikes, no signs of life. The car in the driveway was a gray luxury SUV, with government plates and an American flag magnet on the bumper. It didn't scream friendly, it screamed enforcement. 2 weeks later, the HOA newsletter came with a new name at the bottom. Karen Whitmore, Director of Community Standards. That was the first time I saw her. She wore sunglasses, even in the shade, and carried a clipboard like it was fused to her hand. She walked the sidewalks like she was running surveillance, pausing at every lawn ornament or trash can left out too long. When we waved, she didn't wave back. Still, nothing changed right away. She didn't say a word to us for months. She'd walk by during our rehearsals, lips pressed into a line, but never stopped. I figured she didn't like music. Fine. Not everyone has taste. We didn't need her approval, until the spring. That's when the notices started. At first they were subtle. A flyer taped to my mailbox, about quiet enjoyment clauses, and considerate noise levels. Then a newsletter warning about unregulated gatherings, in residential garage. Then came the anonymous concerned neighbor letter typed, unsigned, folded with precision, mentioning repetitive drumming and low-frequency vibrations. I ignored them. Everyone gets one passive-aggressive letter in their life. It's like jury duty. But the tone shifted fast. One Friday, Tanya hadn't even finished setting up her hi-hat before I saw a flash outside. Karen phone raised, filming us from her driveway like we were criminals. I walked outside, smiled, and offered her a set list. She didn't smile back. She didn't say a word, just turned and walked inside. Still, I didn't want conflict. I printed out the city's ordinance, clearly stating acceptable noise hours and limits, and tacked it next to the garage light switch. I emailed a copy to the HOA board, just in case. No response. And yet, the silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It wasn't long before her silence cracked. The next Friday, we had just kicked off rehearsal. Jesse was warming up a new riff, Tanya doing light taps on the snare, when I saw Karen standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed. No clipboard this time. Just her, that same beige windbreaker, and her gaze like she was watching a fire spread. I stepped out, still holding my guitar. She didn't flinch. "Can I help you, Miss Whitmore?" She motioned toward the garage, tone clear. "We've received several complaints about unregulated gatherings and excessive decibel levels. You're in violation of HOA Covenant Section 9, Community Disruption." I blinked. I don't recall that in the original bylaws. She smiled, tight and smug. "They were amended last month. You should have received the updated packet." "I didn't," I said. "And amendments require a 2-3 homeowner vote." Her smile didn't move. They passed. I looked past her toward the street. Empty. No neighbors out, no kids. The silence of a block that had been warned. Karen turned on her heel and walked away. But not before tossing one final line over her shoulder. "You can always take it up with the board." She was the board. That night, I dug out the HOA rulebook. Mine was still marked revised. Nothing about gatherings, nothing about music. But it didn't matter. Because 3 days later, I got the letter. Certified mail. Signed by Karen Whitmore, Director of Community Standards. "This is your formal notice that continued disturbances will result in fines of up to $1,000 per day, beginning immediately. Failure to comply may lead to legal action or enforcement escalation. It was typed on official HOA letterhead, cheap cardstock with a watermark that probably cost more than the legal review it never received. I called the HOA hotline listed on the letter, mailbox full. I emailed the board, no response. I went to the HOA website. It had been updated recently, new colors, new logo, and under leadership. Karen's name appeared 4 times under 4 different titles. It was clear she ran the show now. So I tried one last thing. I sent her a polite, formal message. Dear Whitmore, to clarify, Civic Static is a private rehearsal group operating well within city-mandated sound limits. We are not a commercial entity, and we do not sell tickets or draw traffic. If you believe otherwise, I invite you to attend one of our sessions. I'd be happy to walk you through our setup, including a decibel monitor, ordinance logs, and the city's music permit process. She never replied. Instead, the next week, a new notice was taped to my front door. This one had red ink. Immediate compliance required. She cited noise disruption, traffic impact, suspicious equipment, and my personal favorite, unauthorized live performance rehearsal. I didn't even know that was a thing. Worse, I noticed the shift in my neighbors. The lanes stopped waving. Mrs. Cordova avoided eye contact. The kids no longer danced in the driveway. The sound that used to unite us was now dividing us. Because Karen wasn't just threatening me with rules, she was working the neighborhood like a PR campaign. I could feel it, whispers I didn't hear. Side chats I wasn't part of. One by one, the lights that used to flick on during rehearsal nights stayed off. She was isolating me, not through violence, but by bureaucracy. A kind of quiet warfare. I saw her again that Sunday, walking the block with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece, whispering to someone who probably didn't exist. She paused outside my driveway, made a note, then moved on. She didn't need to say anything. She already had the narrative. Reckless man-child, with a garage band, and no respect for order. She was the adult in the room. She had framed the argument, and I was losing ground fast. That Monday I opened my mailbox and found a second notice, this one marked final warning. It referenced an HOA unanimous vote to consider legal escalation. No date, no meeting record, no copy of the vote. That's when I realized, this wasn't about volume, it was about control. Karen didn't care how loud we were. She cared that we weren't asking permission. She cared that people had enjoyed something without her oversight, that something existed in her jurisdiction that wasn't signed, stamped, and filtered through her sense of order. So I stopped reacting. Instead, I pulled out a different folder, the one with the permit application I had submitted 3 months ago. You see, the city had launched a community arts initiative, encouraging local artists and musicians to register recurring neighborhood events. It wasn't just for bands, it was for yoga instructors, painters, even chess clubs. If approved, your activity became protected under municipal use rights, even on private property, especially if it served community engagement. I had registered Civic Static as a non-commercial neighborhood arts group. It was free, open, and recurring. And the city had approved it. Fully. The kicker, the HOA had to sign a waiver of objection during that process. A formality but a necessary one. And guess who had signed the waiver? Karen Whitmore. 3 months ago, in ink. Her full name, date, and HOA title, right under a clause that read, I hereby acknowledge the applicant's right to conduct sound-producing artistic activity on their property, subject to compliance with city noise ordinance. She didn't even remember doing it. But I did. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to be a quiet fight. This was going to be a performance. The week after I pulled out that signed waiver, I stopped treating this like a misunderstanding. Because it wasn't. This was war. A quiet one, sure. But war all the same. And Karen, she didn't retreat. She escalated. The first blow came in the form of a daily fine schedule, slid into my mailbox in an unmarked envelope. No signature. No HOA header, just a typed document with bulleted penalties. $100 for unlawful amplified audio devices. $500 for operating a commercial enterprise within residential zoning. Fine was backdated to the week before she even handed me the first citation. She wasn't keeping records. She was rewriting them. I scanned the document and forwarded it to the city's neighborhood liaison. I didn't hear back for 2 days. In the meantime, Karen went door to door. Neighbors I'd known for years, people who used to shout "free bird" as a joke when we rehearsed, suddenly started acting like we were hosting secret raves. One even told Tanya, "It's nothing personal, but we've got property values to think about." Another neighbor whispered to Jesse that Karen said we were one noise complaint away from being shut down by code enforcement. Except, there were no official complaints. Not from the city, not logged in the database. That's when I realized Karen wasn't operating through enforcement. She was operating through intimidation theater. She sent letters, not law. She made noise about rules that didn't exist, hoping no one would check. But I did. I checked everything. City records, county zoning, even the HOA's own amendments, which it turns out were never properly filed with the city clerk. They were paper votes held in Karen's living room with 2 other board members who happened to be her sister and her tennis partner. And then came the anonymous note. Folded pieces of paper left on my car in my mailbox, once even taped to my front door. "You're disturbing the peace. Some of us work for a living. The HOA has rules for a reason. You're making a fool of yourself." Same font, same spacing, probably from the same inkjet printer. It wasn't just about silencing the band. It was about breaking me piece by piece. One rehearsal at a time, one neighbor at a time. And it was working. We lost Tanya for 2 weeks. She said her landlord was getting pressured about illegal group activity in the neighborhood, and she couldn't afford drama. Eli started showing up late, barely talking. Jesse said his wife didn't want their kids around, whatever this was becoming. I understood, but it hurt. That garage, our rhythm, had been the one thing untouched since Dad died. It was grief, and grit, and laughter in 4 counts. Watching it get hollowed out by fake rules and whispered threats was like losing him all over again. Still, I kept rehearsing, even if it was just me and the amp. And while Karen played her little war of paperwork, I played mine. I started documenting everything. Video footage of Karen pacing and filming our house from across the street. Decibel logs showing our volume never exceeded 68 dB, even during solos. The signed waiver, dated, stamped, archived. I even installed a security cam above the garage light and synced it to my laptop. It didn't just record video, it logged sound levels and movement tags. If she tried to claim late-night disruptions or rowdy gatherings, I'd have a time-stamped record to bury that lie. But the pressure kept building. One day, I came home to find a code enforcement officer parked in front of my house. A younger guy, nervous, clipboard in hand. "Just a courtesy check," he said. "We got a report about commercial activity, maybe unlicensed events." I invited him in, showed him the garage, showed him the permit, the waiver, the logs, the city's own arts initiative flyer that listed Civic Static as a recognized group. He looked over everything, checked boxes, nodded. "You're good," he said. "This all checks out." Then he lowered his voice. "Off the record, between you and me, this isn't the first time we've had a call from her." I raised an eyebrow. "Karen?" He nodded. "She calls every week. Different house. Same complaints. If it's not noise, it's fences. If it's not fences, it's flags. Honestly, she floods our office with so many emergencies we had to assign someone to filter her calls." I smiled for the first time in weeks. He left. I played a solo that night just for him, but Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I found a neighborhood petition posted to the HOA's new bulletin board installed directly across from my house. "Remove recurring audio disruptions from community zone." Signatures, all from the same handwriting. By this point it was almost laughable. Almost. Because I was tired. The stress wasn't just about the band. It was about home. About watching the place you love get pulled apart by someone who thinks paper threats can outweigh memory, culture, and sound. But that's when the shift happened. Because while Karen was manufacturing outrage, I was collecting truth. And it was almost time to let it play. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. That's not how my father raised me. He used to say, "Let them make noise, you make plans." So while Karen was busy printing flyers, fabricating bylaws, and scaring neighbors into silence, I was crafting something a bit more permanent. I started with the permit, the one she'd signed without reading. I'd made 2 copies, notarized both, and had the city clerk scan one into the municipal system under public access. The other I kept in a fireproof lockbox with a time-stamped receipt. You don't trust HOA politics. You document them. Then I called in a favor. An old friend of mine, Vanessa Lee, works in the city arts office. We went to tech school together back when I was still deciding between sound engineering and IT security. She helped get the city's community arts permit program off the ground. When I explained what was happening, she didn't just listen, she mobilized. I've seen HOA nonsense before, she said. But this is suppression masquerading as structure. She connected me with a municipal compliance officer, a media relations coordinator, and most importantly, a city council member who had just launched a campaign focused on cultural access and public expression. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy with a guitar in a garage. I was a case study in HOA overreach. Meanwhile, I built a digital folder titled Project Civic Proof. Inside, a grid of HOA citations with metadata showing timestamps and contradiction. Surveillance video of Karen trespassing, once to measure our driveway, another time to film through the side window. A full audio log of her approaching Tanya at her apartment complex with a veiled threat about long-term consequences if she kept playing. Screenshots of every neighbor's email that had once praised our music before they stopped replying. But my favorite entry? The audio recording from the HOA's Zoom meeting, leaked to me by a sympathetic board member named Diego. In it, Karen says, verbatim, "If we keep applying pressure, he'll either move or shut it down. No one wants to live next to a garage concert." She said that, on tape, with witnesses, in a recorded board meeting. So I layered the audio, cleaned it with Logic Pro, and queued it in a folder titled Encore. While that was cooking, Vanessa did me one better. She arranged for a pop-up permit showcase to be held on my block. A city-endorsed one-day community arts celebration, food trucks, lawn art, acoustic sets, and civic static headlining from my own driveway. The city even offered to mail invitations. It was Karen's worst nightmare in a trifold brochure, loud, legal, and public. Still, I wasn't reckless. I filed every paper, copied every receipt, and cross-referenced city regulations. Everything was above board. And Karen had no clue. The night before the showcase, I pulled into my driveway and saw her pacing under the streetlight, fuming. She didn't approach, just stood there, jaw tight, arms locked. I waved. She didn't wave back. But the next morning, she came out swinging. A last-ditch flyer circulated before sunrise, slipped into every mailbox. Urgent community notice, city is being misled. This is not an approved event. Please avoid participation. There will be inspectors present. Except there weren't. And we were approved. At 2 p.m., a city van pulled onto our block. Then another. Then a food truck. Then a crowd. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Some stepped out with folding chairs, a few brought their kids. And then, the music started. We opened with Static Sunrise, our oldest track. Tanya was back. Jesse nodded through the first verse. Eli smiled for the first time in weeks. Karen stood at the edge of her lawn like a judge at a war tribunal. She had her phone out filming, but no one cared. Because we were authorized. Every chord, every riff, every amp. All of it backed by stamped paperwork and a city rep standing 20 feet away, handing out pamphlets. Then came the speech. Vanessa stepped up to the mic. Today's showcase is part of the city's effort to elevate community-led art. And we're proud to spotlight Civic Static for their leadership in cultural expression, inclusion, and neighbor engagement. The applause wasn't thunderous, it was warm. Enough. Karen didn't clap. I did. Then I walked up, took the mic, and smiled. Thanks, everyone. Some folks said we were too loud, but the real noise? That's silence forced by fear. We believe music heals. We believe community should sound like something. So thank you for letting us play. After the set, several neighbors came up and apologized. We didn't want to get involved, Mr. Lane muttered. Didn't know you had all the permits and stuff. I was scared to go against her, someone else whispered. But this was amazing. Karen stood on her lawn the entire time, arms folded. The city rep approached her with a smile and offered a brochure. She didn't take it. And me, I opened my laptop, pulled up the Encore folder, and uploaded the HOA Zoom recording to a private video link. The file name, what she didn't know. 2 days after the showcase, I got an email from the HOA board. Subject line, special session, community standards dispute, attendance required. The email didn't come from Karen, it came from Diego, the same board member who leaked the Zoom call. No agenda was attached, just a time, a Zoom link, and a note. The board has reviewed your submitted documentation. Karen will be present. So will a city liaison. You'll want to attend. I did more than attend. I prepared like it was a courtroom. On the day of the meeting, I wore a plain black tee and wired my mic directly through my laptop's preamp. Crisp sound, calm lighting, no theatrics, just precision. Jesse, Tanya, and Eli sat in the background on mute, silent backup, but present. The meeting opened with polite chaos. Karen started talking before Diego finished the roll call. This meeting was not properly requested. I have serious concerns about confidentiality and misinformation being spread about this board's integrity. Diego cut her off. Karen, you will have your time, but you are not chairing this session. She froze. That was her first loss. Then he turned to me. Mr. Quinn, the board has received your documentation regarding your musical group, your city permits, and several alleged violations issued by this H. Before we address next steps, would you care to present your side of events, for the record? I nodded, clicked share screen, and opened the presentation I'd titled, Noise versus Nuisance, a case study in HOA overreach. I started with the basics. A copy of the city permit, a signed waiver, with Karen's full signature and date, decibel logs from my smart monitor system showing our volumes never exceeded 70 dB, footage of Karen filming us, without cause. Data may show. HOA citations that referenced bylaws, not filed or ratified, according to public records. I paused after each point, gave space, let silence make her squirm. Karen leaned into her webcam, arms visibly clenched. That's misleading, she snapped. Those logs could be faked. The permit wasn't for weekly gatherings. It was for a one-time. Vanessa's voice cut in. She joined the call as an official observer from the City Arts Council. That's incorrect, Miss Whitmore. Civic Static is registered as a recurring non-commercial arts group under the city's Creative Communities pilot. You signed the authorization, I witnessed it. I also processed the update in April. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. The city liaison unmuted. Furthermore, based on the digital packet Mr. Quinn submitted, we've opened an inquiry into potential HOA governance violations related to unlawful intimidation, improper citations, and code misrepresentation. Boom. Karen tried to interrupt, but Diego waved her down. Let's move on to Exhibit F, please. I clicked forward. The screen changed to the Zoom recording. Timestamped, unedited, clean audio. Karen's voice filled the meeting. If we keep applying pressure, he'll either move or shut it down. No one wants to live next to a garage concert. Silence. Tanya looked up behind me, eyes wide. Jesse covered his mouth. Karen visibly recoiled. I let the recording play to the end, where another board member nervously laughed and said, "Just don't let him lawyer up." Then I stopped sharing. I'm not a lawyer, I said, but I do know how to track metadata, record audio, and read the actual law. And I know this. Every attempt made to shut us down wasn't about volume, it was about control. About someone thinking they could rewrite reality by printing new rules and hoping no one questioned it. Diego cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. The board has heard enough to move forward. Then, for the first time, he turned directly to Karen. We're suspending your role as Director of Community Standards pending internal review. Effective immediately, you are prohibited from issuing notices, contacting residents in an enforcement capacity, or representing this board in any formal context. Karen's webcam shook slightly, her face flushed. You can't. We just did. He turned back to me. As for you, Mr. Quinn, Civic Static's permit stands. The board recognizes your full compliance with city and HOA regulations as documented. This HOA will issue a formal retraction of all previous notices and post a correction in the monthly bulletin. I nodded. But I wasn't done. There's one more thing, I said. I'd like to propose a new bylaw, a creative activity clause modeled after the city's language. It would protect registered, non-commercial artistic gatherings within the neighborhood, provided they meet city codes and sound limits. Diego smiled. Send it over, we'll put it on the next ballot. Karen logged off without a word. I didn't smile. Not yet. I waited until the formal letter arrived 2 days later. A stamped HOA resolution, nullifying all fines, citations and warnings. Attached was a signed apology drafted by legal counsel, not Karen. But the final word didn't come from the board. It came the next Friday. At sunset, Tanya pulled up and unloaded her drums. Jesse brought his kids. Eli tuned the guitar with that same half-smile he used to wear. And one by one, neighbors returned. Lawn chairs. Cold drinks. Nods. Claps. Even Mr. Lane leaned on his cane and gave me a slow thumbs up. We played Static Sunrise one more time, but this time it wasn't defiant, it was joyful. And Karen, she stayed inside, blinds drawn, but her silence couldn't touch us anymore. Because now it wasn't just my sound, it was our sound. The house felt different after that Friday. It wasn't just that the music was back, it was something quieter, the kind of peace that settles in after you stop waiting for the next shoe to drop. Karen didn't show her face for a week. Her mailbox overflowed. Her garden, usually trimmed to military precision, went untended. The HOA board confirmed she'd formally resigned from all roles, citing personal reasons. But word got around, the city had flagged her for potential misuse of position related to selective enforcement. Not enough for criminal charges, but enough to ensure she wouldn't be running any more neighborhoods anytime soon. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. Civic Static kept rehearsing, same schedule as always. But the energy changed. We weren't playing to prove anything anymore. We were just playing. And that made the music sweeter, lighter. For the first time in months, it felt like we were back in Dad's garage in spirit, not just space. We even wrote a new song. Tanya named it Cease and Strum. I would have called it Section 3. Either way, it slapped. The HOA newsletter went out 2 weeks later. In place of Karen's section, there was a full-page feature titled Spotlight. Civic Static brings music and community together, a neighborhood success story backed by city partnership. They even printed a photo from the showcase, me on the driveway, Jesse mid-riff, and Tanya grinning like she'd just stolen Karen's clipboard. Eli's daughter stood in the front, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Let them play." But the real justice didn't come from that article. It came in small moments. Mrs. Cordova started waving again, then one night brought over tamales, and said she missed the music. She even stayed for half a set. Dog in lap. The Lanes donated their old lawn furniture to help us host a bigger front yard gathering. 2 teens from 3 houses down knocked on my door asking if we'd teach them guitar, not lessons. The taller one said, "Just how to sound like you." Even the people who signed Karen's fake petition started showing up again quietly, at first standing near the sidewalk. But slowly, they came closer. One couple brought folding chairs and handed out lemonade. One guy offered to build us a low platform to keep the sound aimed upward. Community isn't something you demand with a notice. It's something you earn, sometimes in G chords, sometimes in court filings. And as for the HOA, with Karen gone, the board voted to adopt the creative activity clause I proposed, verbatim from the city's own guideline. It passed unanimously. Now, any resident in the neighborhood could register art, music, or culture-based activities that met city standards, and the HOA was required to support them. No more whisper campaigns, no more made-up violations, no more fear. I kept all the documentation, not out of paranoia, but because stories like mine get buried all the time under paperwork, silence, and fake authority, and because somewhere out there, someone else is getting told to shut up, stop playing, or comply quietly. They'll need proof. They'll need a plan. They'll need to know someone fought back and won. So I built a public archive, a quiet little page titled Play on Purpose. Just the facts. No anger, no shouting, just evidence, templates, permit links, and one line at the top. They tried to shut us down, we turned up. Sometimes I still see Karen. She's still in the house, technically, for now, but she parks around the corner, keeps her blinds shut. A few of the neighbors say she's planning to sell. I don't know, I don't care, because the sound, it's still Last Friday, we hosted our first block-wide jam session. 12 chairs, a pop-up food stand. Eli's cousin brought a keyboard, even Mr. Lane tapped his cane in time. And as the sun dipped low, I looked up from the strings, across the people laughing, across the porch, where Dad used to sit with his coffee and say, "If you're gonna make noise, make it count." We did, and the silence that came after? It didn't mean surrender, it meant peace. This was never just about a garage band. It was about space, about having the right to create, to remember, to live without someone rewriting your piece, with printed paper and fake authority. My father built this house, so his family could make noise without fear. I wasn't about to let someone take that from us with a citation and a stare. Karen thought control came from silence, but sometimes silence is the loudest kind of resistance. And when that doesn't work, you turn up calmly, legally, and with every receipt. The music never stopped. It just waited for the right note to fight back. And now, it's louder than ever. Have you ever been told to stop doing something you loved, just because someone in power didn't understand it? Tell me below, what did you fight to keep? And where are you watching from? Because I promise you, the HOA might have rules, but they don't own the rhythm of your life. Play on.